This show talks about books that feature mental health and mental illness topics. There are many books that include this topic, and my hope is that more and more people know about them because they help to decrease the stigma and help people not feel so alone in their struggle. I am your host, Robin Tamanaha, licensed marriage and family therapist. Joining me today on this episode is my guest, Dr. Davina Kotulski, who wrote the book, The Manna Paradigm Shift, Creating the Consciousness of Abundance and Freedom. Love it. Hi, Davina.
Hi, Robin. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yes, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Surviving the pandemic. How about you?
Same. It's been a year, like literally a year since. So strange. So strange. But glad you're hanging in there. Yeah. So I'd like my guests to introduce themselves. Is there anything you'd like to say about who you are, what you do, or anything you'd like the listeners to know about you?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm a clinical psychologist. Have been practicing for over 20 years. I have a private practice in the Los Angeles area. I also like to write books and support people that way. Not everybody, is ready for therapy, but they might be ready for a book. And so I like to write and share that message of hope and healing through my writing.
Definitely. You know, it's so interesting. I noticed when I started private practice, I was so happily amazed at how many people like books.
Yeah.
Even like whether they're in therapy or not, or just like in conjunction with it, like people do love to read. And, and I think, even during this pandemic, I feel like it went up a little, and doing the inner stuff and reading, maybe unplugging a little. And so I'm really excited about your book. I read it. I love it. Love. Yeah. So to get started, can you, talk a little bit about, I guess, what inspired the book?
That's a great question. Yeah. Well, and I just want to jump in on what you just said too about books. I love books, and as a therapist, I always recommend. I have like at least 5 or 6 books that I recommend to clients. I kind of overwhelm them sometimes. Like, okay, you're going through this now. Also, you can read this book and this book and this book, especially if I'm working with couples. Right? There's so many great books out there to help people do their homework in between sessions, or to help them understand something and go deeper and kind of sit with it and work through it. So I love books. I personally also find books very healing. I love all of Wayne Dyer's books. I like to read psychological books, spiritual books. I like novels that can teach us, and I really enjoy nonfiction that deals with current events. And I love to learn. So I think books are wonderful, and thank goodness for books. So
yeah.
So I'm a huge fan of your podcast because of that reason, and I really appreciate what you're doing to connect people with important books and support people through that. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
What inspired me to write the Manna Paradigm Shift was that years ago I had heard the story about the Hebrews leaving their enslavement in Egypt and going out into the desert to find freedom, and then becoming extremely fearful that they were going to starve to death and wanting to go back to their servitude because life was familiar and safe. But they screamed out for help, or they yelled out for help. And this substance called manna, God gave them this substance called manna. And manna is this idea of food or spiritual nourishment or whatever it is that you need to keep going. And I thought, you know what? That's such an important concept right now because of multiple reasons. But one is that in the United States, kind of from a political contextual way of looking at things, we're having a greater split between the haves and have-nots. And they're like, people are being expected to do more for with less and work harder, longer hours. I think that came with the recession. I saw that happen with the recession, that people were really afraid to say no, to set limits, to take care of themselves. Americans are uncomfortable taking their vacation days. They have less vacation days than other people. And I wanted to bring in this concept and introduce people to a new concept that your needs will be provided for you, and that you don't have to let yourself be in servitude to corporations, governments, whatever it is, bosses.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And too, like you said, I feel like in many ways, yeah, like it's become more and more like just work, 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 produce, or being very task driven, or trying to prepare for all these things. And sometimes cost of living's expensive, so that doesn't help.
Right.
And just kind of this from the societal aspect of just like doing things as opposed to kind of living, right?
Yeah, or
Yeah.
human doing rather than human being. So
Yeah.
that was sort of like the socio-political context. Also, from the psychological, spiritual perspective, this notion that we will get what we need as we need it, and that if we can be true to ourselves, follow our hearts, and trust the universe, what we need will show up one day at a time. We have to stay present.
Yeah. That is amazing. I think too that's in a way different, I think, than kind of the mindset sometimes, but also looking at it that way, I could see how it also would provide a lot of hope. Being in the present moment is also a concept that I think or at least with this pandemic, hopefully maybe helped kind of get practice with that.
Yeah, because you can't put yourself too far in the future, and you can't think about the past too much because it's gone, right? Yeah, we have to really be right here, right now, and day by day see what shows up and how to deal with it. How do we deal with it?
Definitely. So let's talk, a little more into the book. We'll definitely dive into topics, but, I guess kind of like brief overview of maybe like the book, kind of like what it's about or kind of what to expect from it.
Yeah. So the book is, basically brings together cutting edge psychology and ancient spiritual tradition to show you how to deal with your thoughts, move through thoughts that put you in servitude or limit you. There's a longer story in there that I'm not going to go into, but basically how to deal with thoughts that put us in servitude, and how to create a Manna Mindset, which is a mindset of positive expectancy, gratitude, and basically be available to the good that's in our life, see the good that's in our life, and really activate that. And so it helps you, move through stuck places, and it presents a lot of stories of clients I've worked with and how they got through their fears and doubts, and to live a life that is more fulfilling and more, again, about that human being and being present than just the human doing.
Definitely, yeah. And so I'm curious. I have a lot of questions, but specifically, like, say with the Manna mindset, like, how would one, I guess, discover, kind of get in touch with that, or what does that kind of look like?
Yeah, great question. So the Manna mindset is a mindset that focuses. It's in the here and now. So you're being present in the here and now. You're focusing on what's good. It almost deals with some like peak psychology kinds of concepts where you're doing what you can to be your best, to feel your best, to bring joy into your body, right? To have your mind focused in a positive way, because we're going to go through challenging things, but it helps you muster all of your inner resources to be resilient and move forward. There are affirmations that the book talks about. There's some practices to look at some thinking errors that we have. What are some of the mental habits that we get into that take us out of the flow state? How to be surrendered with challenges that come up. What do we do? How do we go with the flow? How do we know when to step back and assess and when to move forward? Just kind of looking at things like that, and how to stay mentally, optimistic while you're dealing with the challenges that come up, not running away from them.
Is there influence of like Eastern traditions?
Definitely, yeah. I think that meditation is one of the non-attachment and meditation and concepts of surrender, very present in the book. When we quiet the mind, we allow ourselves to be right here and right now. And this notion of manna is that the universe gave them what they needed for that day. You couldn't take yesterday's manna and it would rot. So you couldn't bring it in, you couldn't hoard, you couldn't put it in for today, for the next day. You had to be with what's there. And so I think the idea of being fully present to this moment, that's all we have, right? So your good, your nourishment is right here and right now. And if you're distracted, right, or if you're projecting yourself into the future, or again, fantasizing about the past, you're not in the present moment where the opportunities are. Additionally, we sometimes fight against situations that we want things to be a certain way. We expect things to be a certain way. We're attached to an outcome. So the Eastern notion of non-attachment, present, but not attached to a certain outcome, I think is very important.
That's really powerful. That's really neat too. And whether it's in general, I mean, since we're still in this pandemic, that always comes to mind, but like how that's so helpful for now, but also just like life in general too, how that could be really, really helpful, and how that could really just impact like overall, like daily living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's also concepts of what I call, or I don't know, somebody else may have used this term too, miracle consciousness, which is where, we are open and available for miracles to show up in our lives. And there are stories about people that, found themselves with huge bills. They weren't sure how they were going to pay it. And they just kept saying, I don't know the way, but the universe knows the way. There is a way. These will get paid. And then, miracles would happen. Things would show up they didn't expect. And a miracle is often just a shift in consciousness and a trusting the universe, trusting again that we live in a friendly universe, and that if we don't sell ourselves short and we're true to our own vision and our own hearts, that the universe meets us. It's a paradigm shift because that's not how we were raised. We were raised to be extremely afraid. We were raised to hoard, and that's, I'm going to speak Western culture. We were raised to hoard. We were raised to be afraid. We were raised to, take everything you can and don't leave any for the next guy. And that's a very disturbing way to live because that harms our environment. That's what's causing global warming. It's taking more than we need, and it's living in fear. And so the paradigm shift is to trust what you need will be there for you one day at a time. Take what you need, leave the rest. Tomorrow will be another day. You'll get what you need tomorrow, right? And we saw this with the pandemic, like all this crazy hoarding,
toilet paper,
hoarding Purell, you're taking more than you need, and then other people don't have something that they need, and that's a horrible way to live. I think when we were talking before, I mentioned this image of, this Western image of a guy standing like in the 1800s in front of hundreds of thousands of buffalo skulls. And it was like this death pile, and he was proudly standing there with his rifle. And, how Westerners had come into the United States, what was formerly called Turtle Island, and just massacred buffaloes for their hides and sold them off and decimated the population, which was a stark contrast to how the indigenous people of this land lived, and still live, where if they took a buffalo, they used the hide for shelter. They, used their bones for tools. They used the meat for food. They used every aspect, and they didn't just go slaughter all the buffaloes. They just took what they needed when they needed it. And I think that's the concept of manna, is that just take what you need. You'll be given what you need, but stop hoarding. It's destroying the planet. So, and we don't need to live in fear. And again, that fear, that those Western values, we need the values of capitalism. We just need to critique them. How can we have conscious capitalism? How can we have capitalism that's not materialism, right? How can we have a free market, but not one that destroys our planet? So these are, big concepts to think about. But I believe that when we do the internal work and we trust, we're not going to act in these crazy, fearful ways that are really destroying our planet and ourselves, our own lives.
Yeah, that sounds hopeful. I think in some ways too, like freeing, trying to control or guess like what the outcome is. And as far as like detrimental, I know you mentioned like the environment and like capitalism, but I would also wonder too, like how that impacts like the human and the soul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, in the book doesn't go into all of these things. It touches on it, it mentions it, but it's about how to personally start living your own life from a place of trusting life, facing your own fears, and everyone's fears are there's some unique fears, and then there's some things that we share, and how to feel strong and confident and move forward in your life. And that's why it's called, the subtitle is Creating the Consciousness of Abundance and Freedom, because it is a consciousness. It is a choice. And when you can create that consciousness of abundance and freedom, you can have it. You can live it. Your life becomes fuller. So, that's what's in the book.
Yeah. And I like, what you said before too about the kind of thoughts. I think, in the book it was referred to as like one part was like mental chains too, but then even just like almost we think of just like kind of thinking patterns or like thinking ways too that can affect, how someone views himself, the world, or, others. And throughout your book too, I noticed like that inner, like the mental shift too, like doing that shift, even as what you just said about like, whether it's through like the miracle or something, and like, trusting that things will work out and things will kind of come through.
Right. We all tend to be pretty, our default tends to be sort of negative, right? Our internal dialogue, we have negative self-talk. We doubt ourselves. Things happen. We, make these, negative biases. We're prone to negativity bias. We're prone to personalizing things, catastrophizing. We're prone to a lot of really negative thinking. And when we allow those thoughts to kind of run wild, we miss out on opportunities. We push people away. We don't show up in a place of joy or confidence, and we show up with a tentativeness or a self-doubt, or a paranoia towards other people. And again, then life is not joyful. We don't feel good about ourselves. We don't feel good about other people. And a lot of those things are just erroneous. They're cognitive errors. They're thinking errors. And if we can change those thinking errors and stop ourselves and go, oh, wait, I'm probably, being overly dramatic here, or I'm, ascribing something to something that's not true. What if I I have a negative thought. What if I neutralize it? Do I feel better once I can neutralize it? What if I can, make it positive? And sometimes it is just neutralizing it. It's like, it's not bad. It's not good. It's just neutral. It's nothing. They didn't think anything positive or negative. They actually weren't even thinking about you at all. They were just thinking about lunch. But, we might say, oh, they did this. It meant this. No, it just meant they were hungry. And those thoughts, can again, like lead to a downward spiral where we have a bad day, or we don't give our best performance. We're not happy. We push people away. So if we can address those thinking errors, and then also if we can program our self-talk by connecting, like, what's good about my life? What can I be grateful for? What do I love about life? What can I appreciate about myself? What can I project into the future that's positive, that allows me to, again, positively flow into this moment, and the next moment, and the next moment? We're going to be happier. More opportunities are going to come to us. We're going to live a richer life. And so, again, there's just some psychological things that we can do to feel more abundant, to create more abundance and joy in our lives.
Yeah. And two, what you said about like, the negative bias and like, maybe, more so negative ways of thinking, to how that can really cloud that moment, like those present moments too. So by doing the shift, I would envision too that present moment, whatever's happening that day, that week, whatever, will also be enhanced because you're like fully present in that, and you're open to other other possibilities other than like, this is not going to go so well, or this is very daunting. I would think too that in general would also just like enhance that present moment living as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that experience. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also to help people get out of bad situations. Like, again, we stay in, jobs where we're unhappy. We stay in living situations that we're unhappy, relationships that we may be unhappy in. And, sometimes it's just shifting our own thinking around it and addressing issues. And then we can, make a situation less toxic and, more healthy for us. Sometimes it's just, hey, if I feel empowered, now I can say something and I can step up and be more, create more equity in my relationship or my job or whatever it is, living situation. And other times it's, finding the faith and the courage and the strength and the confidence to go, hey, this isn't working. I tried this, and it's time to leave, and to trust that you can leave, because a lot of people are afraid to leave situations because they think, oh my God, I'll never get another job, or no one will ever love me again. And so they're terrorized, and terrified to make changes. And it's like, you have to choose your freedom. You can't just stay in a bad situation. You have to choose it. But sometimes we need help to take that leap.
Can I share a personal story? Mm-hmm. So many things came to mind based off what you just said too. So this is more personal and professional. I'll say in one way, I know like for me too, there, at least within my culture, like family, there's kind of rigidity, and like you stay at a job that is secure and safe, meaning it's pretty practical, which is why a lot of my family members are, doctors, lawyer, things that are important in the world, but was never really my dream, I think. And that was the known territory in some way. And so doing psychology, therapy, at least within my culture, we're like, it's like emotions, what we're talking about, is very, very different. But for me, it very much resonated with something that felt like home. Like to me, it always felt like, something I connected with, something I'd want to do. Like I was wanted to help people, but like in a different way than I think others that I know do. So that was like one thing I remember, being quite nerve wracking, because therapy world is kind of unknown territory, and psychology too, like within my family. Right. So I remember that was like in a way I kind of had to work through my own thoughts with that, and like, am I going to do something that I really want to do, as opposed to what my original intention was actually public health. So that would have been very interesting during this pandemic. And it was mainly just because a parent had suggested it to me, and it was kind of within the medical realm. Math and science for me, not good. But so medical school was never an option. So there was that. Yeah. That was one, like the culture piece. And then the other was making a leap for myself. I remember at one point I pretty much took a gamble on myself. I worked in a career. I was already licensed as a therapist. I was more working in like managed care insurance world. And it was stable. It paid great money. I had a schedule, insurance benefit. I had like all these things. And I just stumbled upon this job because I needed a respite from doing therapy, regular therapy work. And it turned out to be way more burnout. And I did that for like a year and a half. And my intention when I got into the psychology major was to do private practice. And so I remember there was like a crucial moment. It was like something was going on at work, and within a lot of the changes and stuff, and I wasn't happy with it. And I knew like this was not my place. Like this was not a place that was going to fulfill me in ways that, or reasons why I even got into this field in general. So I had to decide at that moment, I think now is the time to make a leap for private practice, which I had zero clients, zero clients. Had yet to network with anyone, and in Orange County where I work, and I resigned. I resigned. Yeah. I was like, I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm not happy. Like, And so I resigned and I just started private practice with like nothing, and highly, highly scary. But part of that was like, I'm going to trust that this is going to work out. This was always my dream. This has always been something that was what I had envisioned for myself. It has worked out for others that have been in private practice. It's just new to me, so it's quite scary. But yeah, so I made that leap. I resigned and like put in my 2 weeks notice, and then I was done, and I was launched off to the private practice world. That was a very long story, but I just wanted to share that.
No, that's an important, no, I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you for sharing that, Robin, because you're showing what's possible when you invest in yourself. And like you said, you took a gamble on yourself. I'm going to just change it and say you invested in yourself. You believed in yourself. Yeah. And you saw that it paid off. And I think that's important. We, again, a lot of us have been programmed to invest in somebody else's vision and not our own. Right? To trust somebody else, to trust the thing that's already there, the structure. And, in the book I share, in the introduction, I share my own story, which is kind of similar, actually. I had the stable job. I was working for the federal government as a psychologist. I'd been there 12 years, all the benefits, retirement, 12 more years to go. And I could get, I could get my pension for the rest of my life, health insurance for the rest of my life. But my soul was just dying. My heart was breaking. I was working as a psychologist in a prison. And I know I was doing great work. They were giving me accolades, awards, whatever. But I just started to see how I was giving up my own freedom to be there, and that all of those benefits were turning into like golden handcuffs that kept me from, enjoying in my life, really. And so same thing, I decided to start my own private practice, from scratch. and it took a while. But again, it's like, I really believe that if you, follow your heart and you just put one foot in front of the other, you say yes when opportunities come up, and you just keep doing what you need to do, you relax, that it works out. And I did that and left my job at the beginning of the recession in 2008.
Yeah. Oh my. Yeah.
Really. But, it shows you can thrive. You can thrive even in a recession.
Definitely.
Yeah. So.
Well, is there anything I didn't bring up about like the book or anything else you wanted the listeners to know, aside, like within the realm of like your book and everything?
I think just grab it for a second here. Mm-hmm. There's, in the book, something called the 30-day Manna Challenge, and it gives you exercises to do every single day to create that Manna mindset. And so every day there's something new to work on to get yourself into that higher vibration. So maybe just talking about that when we are operating at a higher level of positivity, again, things shift around us. And so you really want to focus on creating that Manna mindset and bringing more joy into your life, into your body. That really shifts something on the cellular level inside of you. And you're just more magnetic to your own good, to your well-being, to things happening in your life. You're healthier, happier. And so, I just wanted to mention that 30-day piece of it. And I am doing a program where people can sign up for the 30-day Manna Challenge, and they get an email every day into their inbox, and telling them what to do, and some practices and some inspirational words and instructions on how to create the Manna mindset. And they can find out about that on my website, davinakotulski.com, or on the mannaparadigmshift.com.
Great. That's really neat. I remember that in the book, and I like that there's that challenge with the email. That's really cool. Really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it really helps, because it's just a reminder. Like the more we can engage in regular practices that uplift us, the happier we're going to be. Mm-hmm. And it's just getting into new habits.
Yeah.
Regular habits.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I hope everyone checks out your book, because there are so many good nuggets that we didn't even mention today in there. So it's like filled filled with really good, practical, applicable takeaways, which is really nice. And I've always been a fan of that, like with books where it's like, it can extend further than just like the reading. I always love those. And yours is definitely that. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
Well, actually, one more thing, Robin. I literally just got these in. This is a new cover for my book, Behind Barbed Eyes. And this is my novel about working in the women's prison system. And it is a kind of a redemption story told told from the point of view of two protagonists. One is an incarcerated bank robber and the other is a clinical psychologist and their healing journey together. So,
oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, this one's out on Audible too. I hired a voiceover actor for it because I am not an actor, and I thought they could do the voices better. But yeah, it's if you're interested in like a good novel that deals with psychological, kind of like a psychological thriller, that's out there too.
Cool, cool. And where can people find your books?
So you can find my books everywhere books are sold. Mm-hmm. So all your major online retailers and your favorite independent booksellers. So just go online to whoever you like to order from and order from them there. It's available also through Kindle and ebook, and then it will be available also by the time this is out. It's going to be available through iTunes and Audible, so it will be an audio book as well.
Cool. Yeah, nice. And also, just for our listeners too, to know that you do have a free audio chapter and coming soon PDF. So what I'll do is I'll put that as a button on the booksbetweensessions.com website. That way the listeners can just go there and click on it and open up. And I'll do the same for the show notes. Actually, I'll put it in as a link. That way the listeners can just easily access it, as well as the websites you mentioned. And I'll also have your social media handles as well listed for everyone to find.
Okay. Yeah, because if they go to the mannaparadigmshift.com, they can get the free chapter there.
Okay, cool. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being a guest. It was a pleasure. Pleasure.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the good work that you do too. I'm so glad you became a psychologist. We need you.
Thank you. All right. Well, take care. Thanks for listening. Hopefully this was informative or helpful. If you have time, be sure to check out Davina's past guest episode on this podcast, which aired on April 11th, 2020, to discuss Davina's book, It's Never Too Late to Be Yourself. If you think this episode may be helpful to others that you know, be sure to share this episode with them. Resources mentioned on this episode can be found at the podcast website, booksbetweensessions.com. The social media handles and websites for today's guest is listed in the show notes and on booksbetweensessions.com. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please be sure to leave us a rating. If you would like to stay up to date, please subscribe to this podcast and follow the Instagram Books Between Sessions. I post multiple videos and lives every month, so be sure to follow our Instagram so you can see extra content. And if you have any book suggestions or books you would like discussed on this podcast, please send us a message on the contact page of the podcast website, booksbetweensessions.com. If you're an author who has written a book that includes mental health or mental illness topics and would like to be a guest on the podcast, complete the form on the Be on the Contact page of our website. Also, this podcast is not psychotherapy or counseling. If you need to speak with a professional, you should find one local to you and contact them directly. If this is an emergency, please call your local emergency number or go to your nearest emergency department.